So I was just watching a video on YouTube of this guru that supposedly has a lot of reviews. Like he's got high reviews, a lot of subscribers. And he was talking about the concept of self-control, and he was referring back to the marshmallow test back in the 1960s. And he was saying that the marshmallow test was misleading, and that it's overcoming addictive behavior or having a successful life is not a matter of self-control, and that it's not that successful people have a high degree of self-control. It's just that they have a certain lifestyle, which in a sense is actually kind of true, but it's a bit misleading. And let me describe to you, hopefully in a more simplified way, of what's going on based on my experience and my observations. And I'll talk about the theoretical part, but also the practical applications of it as well. So first of all, specifically what I think another way to put it is we're talking about free will. And so much debate about that, whether or not free will exists or not. Everything outside of the human consciousness or the ability to focus on a specific thought pattern, everything else after that is determined. Everything else is a causal chain of physics, of cause and effect. You have the ability to, through your consciousness, through your abstract ability, you have the ability to conceptualize yourself as an abstract entity. Okay, so you have the analog I and metaphor me. Okay, so metaphors and analogs are properties of language that allow for a human, for a person, to abstract, to take something that you recognize and apply that as a metaphor to something that is not easily recognizable, something that's more abstract. So, to think of the surface of Titan is like, is flexible like a pastry. Okay, so the pastry is something that you recognize, something that is concrete, and the surface of Titan is something that's abstract. And by the way, that metaphor was told by somebody by NASA about the Huygens probe that landed on the moon Titan. But anyway, so you have the free will to either focus or not focus. Okay, you could focus on a thought pattern of, I'm going to eat a chocolate chip cookie, or I'm going to instead eat a bowl of vegetables. Okay, so you have two thoughts. I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y. And you can focus on one or the other. Okay, one gives you a short-term pleasure, the other one gives you long-term pleasure. And you have the ability to think, you have the ability to reason. You can say, well, the long-term pleasure is a better outcome because short-term pleasure is just that it's here and gone very quickly, versus a long-term pleasure, it sticks with you and it's in line with the rest of my goals. So I chose to focus on the constructive thought pattern. So this is where self-control comes in. Now, I mentioned the marshmallow test in the beginning of this video. In the 1960s, there was a marshmallow test where a marshmallow was placed in front of a child. The adult said, I'll give you a second marshmallow if you don't eat this marshmallow. So the adult left, and some of the kids ate the marshmallow and some of them did not. They sat there and waited. And they find out that the kids that did not eat the marshmallow had, on average, more positive life outcomes. They were more successful in business, etc. So this guy on YouTube was misunderstanding the concept. He was saying that success is not related to self-control. He was saying that lifestyle, as if lifestyle has nothing to do with self-control to begin with. So this is how it works. If you exercise a self-control muscle, okay, and you continue to do so, it gets stronger and stronger. Somebody who is scrolling through their phone. I mean, they're like this on their phone and they're scrolling through their phone and they have a short attention span and they can't get through a page of a book at a time. If the reading material is technical, they just can't get through a paragraph because they have such a short attention span. That person has poor self-control. But if you spend more time reading and less time scrolling through a phone, for example, you begin to develop more and more self-control. You develop a chemically in your brain becomes more hardwired to focus, and you also, instead of being whimsical all the time, you're rewarding yourself for more long-term pleasures. You actually have stronger emotional responses by delayed gratification. So in the beginning, somebody with a short attention span might only read a page at a time, but if they continue to read a page at a time, eventually they can read 2 pages and 3 pages, etc., and then they can read a chapter at a time, right? Of course, that depends on the reading material, but so your self-control is something to be exercised. Think of it like this. There's a long-term lifestyle self-control where people who are successful are over here and their self-control range is over here. They're exercising that. Now, they have the potential of falling back if they give in to their vices, the short-term pleasures that are destructive. Then you got people who are drug addicts, gambling addicts, whatever. Their self-control is over here. They have a range of self-control, but they don't quite have the free will because their brains aren't chemically hardwired to be over here. So when you're over here, you exercise self-control. Well, you say, well, I'm not going to do any drugs. I'm going to substitute my habit for something else it might be destructive, but less destructive. And so they're operating on this side of their range. So the range moves over here and they become more capable. And over time, their range can move. They can move the needle. So that is what's happening. So yes, free will matters. Self-control matters. Self-control is something that to be exercised. And if you do it enough, you can be more successful. One of the things that this guy made a claim to is that he's saying that addicts have that actually exercise their self-control more often than people who are successful and just have a healthy lifestyle. And I can understand why he's saying that. He's saying that if you're constantly in temptation, that you're struggling against the temptation, and such a person, if they're struggling, yes, they are attempting to do it, but when they give into their vices, in their range, they go right back to this side again instead of going back to this side. So really, it's not that they're exercising more self-control, it's that they're ping-ponging within that range more, for someone who's struggling, okay? When you succeed and you stay over here, your range comes over here, okay? So that's actually what's happening. It's not that a drug addict is exercising self-control in the long run. It's that a struggling drug addict is failing to exercise self-control properly and is not moved out of their addiction. So this is the correct way to look at it, and hopefully this is more clear. This is a 9-minute video, something this guy tried to explain in 20 minutes.